Static Shock is back. With the long, ongoing rumors of a live-action Static Shock movie being produced by Michael B. Jordan, I figured it would be a good time to catch up on everyone's favorite manipulator of electromagnetic energy. And lucky for us, his story was just rebooted in the last few years with a fresh, new origin and universe to go with it. So let's dive right into Static Shock Season 1. Our story begins with a young Virgil talking about how strong and kind his father is, but he feels like he is the opposite. He feels weak because he's picked on often and wonders how he'll ever get a girl to like him. So when a beautiful girl from school, named Frida, invites him to a protest after school, he accepts. Virgil arrives at what starts as a peaceful Black Lives Matter protest until his bullies from school spot him and begin to pick on him. After calling Virgil an Oreo, Frida says something to Francis, and he calls her a slut, prompting Virgil to punch him and causing a fight to break out. This makes the people around him come to his aid, and a riot breaks out, causing the police to arrive and shoot tear gas into the crowd. Except, this was a new, experimental tear gas that caused many people to be unalived. Or so they thought. Many of the teens and others woke up with new powers as what they call Bang Babies, named after the incident that created them, which the media is calling the Big Bang. Virgil wakes up to his sister telling his parents why he was at the protest, and his dad telling him that he's going to start training in martial arts again so that he may face his bullies, but Virgil was facing other problems. His new electromagnetic powers kept manifesting themselves in unpredictable ways, like when he was using the toilet, so he had to learn to control them quickly. After a couple days off, he decides to go back to school, with the anger of the protest and his bullies still festering on his mind. Once he makes it to school, he instantly sees his bully, Francis Stone, harassing a female student with his freshly acquired flame powers, so Virgil steps in. The newly self-named Hot Streak tries to shoot his flames at Virgil, but Virgil evades them with ease and then begins to fry Francis in front of the whole school while saying, "You gave yourself a nickname? Weak." While struggling with the anger of the feelings that come with his new powers, Virgil has to actively make the decision to not unalive Francis, despite the protest of other students. Afterwards, a security officer runs over to check on the situation, but Francis claims he just slipped to keep from admitting that Virgil defeated him, and the officer lets them go. Since Static almost fried Francis in front of the entire school, he's been dealing with this buzzing inside of his head that keeps getting louder. The fact that he blew up and almost decided to end Francis Stone, and the fact that his entire life has been changed in just a few weeks' time. After a few more days off, he decides to go back to school again and has a small argument with his sister on the way out, letting us know that Virgil's more irritable than usual. Then, we see a clip of another student's podcast called Darius on the Real, where he explains that the gas was rumored to be an untested, experimental gas created by Alva Industries and that it had unalived many of the kids at the protest. He also explains a good portion of the ones who did survive were mutated so bad that they can't even hide their powers, making them a target with nowhere to go. Back to Virgil, who makes it to school with the buzzing becoming so loud that he could feel himself twitching. He was expecting to receive backlash for what had happened, but to his surprise, the star athlete, Derek, took credit for taking down Francis, and since he shut down the cameras beforehand, there's no proof otherwise. He runs into his best friends, who explain how worried they've been, but Virgil tells him that he's been fine, to not worry, and that he'll see them for the new Shadow Dragon campaign that weekend, in an attempt to save his friend's feelings. Later that night, Static's family is having dinner, and he can feel the buzzing getting louder in his head as his family is trying to figure out how they can help him. Then, Francis shows up at Static's house while his family's still eating dinner, telling him that he wants to settle the score. He tries to talk Francis down to keep his family safe, but Francis would prefer hands. So Static begins to fight back and realizes Francis keeps heating up, but his flames are getting shorter, so he's probably exhausting himself, and Static comes up with a plan. He creates an electrical field to snuff out the oxygen he needs for his fire. This works, but as he's contained, Static's sister comes over to check on him and Francis is freed. This gives him enough time to throw flames at their house and set it ablaze to enact his revenge. Before we figure out if Virgil saves his house, make sure you like and subscribe if you're enjoying the video, and let me know in the comments if you're enjoying the new origin, or if you hate it. Back to the video. Virgil stares for what feels like an eternity at his family's burning home. Hot Streak begins to taunt him. "You don't want no smoke." But as he's charging up his flames, he runs out of gas. And as much as he wants to run the fade with him, Virgil decides to save his house, and Francis gets away. He uses the same trick he used on Hot Streak on his house, on a larger scale, and pits the flames out, but he runs out of juice himself. It's determined that the flames weren't that strong and the house is fine, but Virgil's parents begin to argue about what to do about his powers and whether or not it's safe to seek medical help for him. He tries to go back to school, but his old friend turned podcaster Darius tries to interview him about what really happened in the school with Francis, and Virgil gets angry after being pestered and fries his phone. He then leaves the school to skate and clear his head before he decides to call his old mentor, Mr. Metcalf, who's involved in some seemingly shady stuff, but he answers Virgil and gives him the number and location to one of his safe houses with materials he may be able to use. Meanwhile, Derek goes to see the metahumans he was interviewing before, only to learn one was taken in a raid by the army at Holocaust Rally, who seemed to have been led by Francis, who gained immunity by agreeing to give up names and help with gathering up bang babies. Then, Virgil finds a safe house with some superhero materials, but the police arrive, thinking he's Mr. Metcalf. Virgil sends a robot he found in the lab out to distract the police, and they instantly open fire. He jumps out thinking he can make it, but they open fire at him, and as the bullets close in, he closes his eyes to feel nothing. Upon opening them, he sees that he stopped the bullets. Static then realizes he can use his powers to move metal and launches the police guns into infinity, and then begins to run away. The police are hot on his trail though, and begin to surround him over top a manhole, when he acquires his iconic method of transportation and flies off. After sneaking back into his house, Virgil decides to look through the bag he took from the lab, which contains some kinetic metal among other things. Then, he realizes the suit he stole is made up of a special material and decides to rework it. Thus, Static Shock's new superhero costume is born. If you like the story so far, let me know in the comments by saying static below, and like and subscribe, and I'll finish out the Season 1 series in one long video. Also, let me know how you feel about the new, rebooted origin of Static Shock, and until next time, I've been the Popular Introvert.